Well, we'll wait a few more minutes, see how many will join us. It's pretty distressing kind of readings that you had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no worse than the first week.
It's true.
But the first week was way back in the Middle Ages. This is closer. This is supposed to be modern universe.
Yes,
supposed to be.
And that's the scary part.
Well, but you know, and it's pre-Nazi. It's pre-Hitler. You know, Hitler didn't come out of a vacuum, right?
Yeah, and we will see and talk about it.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, good to see you again. Did you like yesterday?
Suzanne?
I sure did.
Oh,
yeah, it was wonderful. We're talking about the musical Shabbat service.
Ah.
Oh. Yeah, it was nice.
Wow.
Yes.
I just want to jump in for a minute. I have some eyesight issues and I had a lot of difficulty reading. So if there's any way to either increase the size of the fonts so that we don't have to work with those very small ones.
You cannot make it bigger?
Arie, on my computer, it wouldn't go bigger.
Well, you should call Sheila.
Well, I send it to Sheila.
She's very good at giving you a different format.
Right. So next week, I'll tell her to enlarge it.
Please, thank you. This is very difficult for me.
Will do.
Thank you.
No problem at all. Well, my dear friends, we'll wait 2 more minutes, usually 5 minutes, but you can talk and tell me what your impression of this horrific stories. Let's start with the Mortara affair.
To me, it just shows the mentality of the Vatican after, like, even post-Christendom, this attitude that the only thing that matters is what is the theologically perfect, logic. Everything else doesn't matter. And that theology rules everyone and everything regardless. And I personally see a direct parallel to what's going on in the anti-abortion camps right now. It's like some people think their theology is everyone's theology. And as a Jew, it really makes me angry because it's like, it totally does not even consider the Jewish point of view of when life begins, which is after birth, basically. So it's like, but this story, just completely highlights, even in the face of his own cardinal advisors, the Pope would not budge.
Would not budge, yeah.
Everybody around him was saying, you can't do this. It's the family. It's, and this is post-rational period. So I'm sorry I'm going off, but it just made me so angry.
No, it's good.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Suzanne, you have a particular point of view based on your past, and so it's appreciated.
Thank you. Arie, I had a bachelor's in and master's from Notre Dame in Roman Catholic. So it's like, so this is why I know, like, this part of, oh my God. Yeah. It's just awful.
See, I had always heard stories about this, my parents being from Poland, the heart of anti-Semitism. So, there were always stories, some real, some not real, about these kinds of things happening. So I wasn't upset in the way you are, because, Suzanne, because, it's very upsetting to read.
Yeah.
I'm sure these people, this family was never okay after this. Could never be okay.
How would they?
Yeah, they would be devastated,
Right.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that at no point, well, maybe I missed some because, as I said, I had a lot of difficulty reading, but I found it interesting that I didn't find any dwelling on the quote Christ killer theme. In other words, Jews were defiled but it wasn't clear to me where the defilement is coming from, other than not accepting the divinity of Christ as Christ killers. Just it did not come through to me.
I'm talking only about Mortara. I'm not moving to Dreyfus.
No, I wasn't talking about Dreyfus per se. I'm just considering that the
theology.
Well, it wasn't just theology. I mean, I actually experienced it in my own life. We lived in an apartment building that was multiple families, and without air conditioning, much of life ended up in the open courtyard or in the hallway, or open doors, open windows, and there would be discussions that would say things like, well, of course it's going to rain. It's a Jewish holiday. It always rains on the Jewish holiday. And well, after all, it was such a almost as an inbred kind of, you're defiled by God. You are totally rejected by God, and therefore you were the Christ killer after all.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, Arie, I was fortunate in my education. I went to a Jesuit school, and Jesuits are either the rebels of the faith or the stormtroopers. And all my professors were the rebels, and I have Jesuit friends still, and they're rebels.
Wow. Interesting. Oh, I see we have Alan is joining us by picture. Oh, here you are. See?
Hello, Alan.
Hi, Alan. Alan, you're on twice.
Yeah, we see you twice.
Hey, sweetie, my screen froze. Can you come here for a second? My screen froze or something. Like, see how I'm not moving? This is weird.
You're moving.
You are moving.
Am I moving?
You're moving.
I don't look like I'm moving.
You are.
See what I mean?
No, you're not.
I see Susan.
Shake your head back and forth.
I'm shaking my head back and forth, but I'm not. I'm not seeing myself moving on my side, but that's okay.
Oh.
As long as you can.
No, it's not Susan, it's Jennifer.
Jennifer's not moving.
Jennifer is frozen.
I'm frozen, but you can hear me, right?
Oh yeah, we can see you.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that, but as long as you can hear me, I am still here.
We hear you, and we are happy to hear you. So we are starting. Alan, you have something to say?
No, I'm just glad I finally got on.
Well, we were waiting for you. We cannot start without you.
Okay.
Some more probably people are taking off for
I'll tell you, I think
Mother's Day.
I believe the Dreyfus affair is very interesting because
let's wait for the Dreyfus, because it will really take us, and I want to start with Mortara to go chronologically. And this is an unbelievable story on its own right. A 6-year-old, police is coming and take him from his parents and his brothers and sisters, because his nanny sometimes, when he was 6, baptized him. And there is a book of this historian Kerzer, a whole book. I gave you a summary, a few pages, but there are 250 pages on this affair. There was investigation. How did she baptize him? Was it a running water? And she gave an indication it was from a gutter, so it came from heaven or something to that effect. So
in the reading, I think it said that it came from a bucket of water.
Right, so there is a difference. It came from something of a running water, which is important for baptism or something to that effect. And so you, again, an unbelievably inhumane procedure, which is covered by a legal process. that legitimize this horrific behavior of destroying a family and kidnapping a child from his family.
Arie, may I interrupt you for a second? Oh. Judy, could you please stabilize your screen? It's making me seasick.
I need to move from one room to another, so I'm done. I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say, and you know, just throw this in there, that this was all based on hearsay anyway.
Who is speaking now, Jennifer?
It's Jennifer, sorry.
Right. No, we have the yellow light, so it's you.
Yeah, good. But the whole thing was just based on this woman's, you know, the caregiver's testimony. You know, there were no witnesses, there was no type of evidence, and yet look how far that it was so weighty that it, you know, it would never even be questioned, and that the Pope you know, clung on to this, you know, permanently, and there was no changing his mind. This was based on one woman's explanation, and that was it.
Yeah, I just want to give you some kind of a background. Italy in early 1860s, before unification, Italy is very much divided to small city-states. Some of them are principalities, some of them are dukedom, and one of them, the most important for our purposes, is the Papal States. So the Pope, in a way, in the Italian city-state system, has a dual role as a Pope, leader of Christendom, and a temporal ruler of a territory, which is Lazio, which Rome and the environment around Rome, township around the city of Rome, and Emilia-Romagna, which is the area of Bologna. Emilia-Romagna is known, and you are familiar with it, because they produce the best Parmesan cheese. If you grated a cheese over a spaghetti, this is the best in the world. And the center is the city of Bologna. Some anecdotal story about Bologna, because this is more industrial city-state, highly modern in terms of industry. I'm talking 19th century. They were the most ferocious enemies of the Pope. Even today, they are considered to be a communist, radical left kind of a state. And that has to do a lot with the legacy and abuse that they suffer over centuries from the papacy. In a recent survey, the people of Bologna were considered to be the atheists, the most hateful of the papacy. I'm giving you as a story behind the scene to understand what is happening in front of our eyes. So in 1848, there was a rebellion against the papacy, and there was some kind of a short-term republic established in Rome and in other parts of Italy. It was short for a few months. It was crushed by the help of French troops. Now the French, you can see they are playing a very interesting role, trying to oppose the behavior of Pius IX in the kidnapping of Mortara. Mm-hmm. France is, from the late 18th century, is the birthplace of the French Revolution. I mean, we have a republic in France, which is the first republic at the aftermath of the establishment of the American Republic, which is all this lofty idea of fraternity, equality, and the idea of citizenship. And they destroy and demolish the institution of the monarchy. In fact, the French executed the last king that they had and created the radical idea of a republic and a secular republic where each person is a citizen with a right to vote. Major event, and they try to impose this ideology, which is modern, all over Europe. From Jewish perspective, all of a sudden, overnight, in the early 20th century, Jews were not just a persecuted minority closed in ghettos, but they become emancipated. They became citizens. And citizens means they are part of the commonwealth of all this state in Europe. It creates many problems. For the Jews, how do you define yourself? Are you an Orthodox Frum Jew who thinks about coming back to Zion? Or you identify with the state that you live in? For the Christian, it also, for the people of all this Christian land, it was a problem. These people who crucified and killed Jesus, are they equal to us? Are we ready to toss over all the barriers and let them in as equal to us? And this is the dilemma that goes throughout the 19th century. And that's behind the scene explains what is unfolding in front of our eyes. So there was up and down at the aftermath of the French Revolution when Napoleon was defeated and exiled to Elba. Reactionary regimes are coming back to Europe. Kingships are being re-established. They try to re-establish the old order of the old regime. It didn't work. It didn't work for long. So you have in the 1940s, rebellion of people, ideas of nationalism is taking place. Tear down all this empire, build a national states. And this is the story of the second part of the 19th century. Italy is a geographical expression. You have multiplicity of city-states. As I told you, some are republics. Don't think about republic like modern republic. You have control of the rich and the powerful, but they are merchants mostly. Then you have the religious papacy, papal state, which run by the Pope. Then you have kingship and dukedoms in northern and southern part of Italy. And then all of a sudden, in 1861, you have a confluence of rebel rouser by the name, a guy by the name of Garibaldi is coming and helped to conquer the South. He is helped by the aristocracy of Piedmont, which is Turin of modern time, and the leader by the name of Cavour. With the help of France, eventually in 1870, they unified Italy. When our story is unfolding, it's the beginning of the process. From 1861 to 1870, there is a civil war all over Italy. In 1861, the rebellion is starting to liberate Italy. In 1870, Italy is unified. The Pope is basically forced out of power, and he became a prisoner in the Vatican, a prisoner of his own choice. He doesn't recognize the new regime in unified Italy, which is a secular republic. And the Jews in that secular republic are citizens with full citizen rights. And that's the unfolding story in front of our eyes. And I will read you some citation which will really cause you to cringe of the horrific story of the level of anti-Semitism unfolding in front of our eyes. What is of interest? How many of you visited Rome? So I'm sure when you visited, you went to the Jewish ghetto. And if you visited the Jewish ghetto, it's the only place, A, that you can eat kartoshi, artichoke, alla Judaica, which is the emblem of the cuisine of the Italian, the Roman Jewry. And when you go there, you can see the high-risers. They have 6, 7, 8 floors buildings. The first high-riser in Europe, guess what, were built in Rome and in Venice, in the ghettos. Why? Because Jews were crowded. They were not allowed to move out of these places. If you go inside, the staircases are extremely narrow and extremely steep because they had to construct and add additions to these places in order to accommodate their population. At the time, how many of you, when you go to the Jewish ghetto, you go a few steps, few hundred meters, and you come to Piazza Campo dei Fiori. And in Campo dei Fiori, it's a beautiful marketplace. And they sell flowers to die for, especially now. In the 1800s, that was the government of the papacy. On Sunday, all the Jews, by law, up to 1820, they were forced to come and listen to sermons, basically criticizing Judaism and telling the Jews how they are failed religion and how they really should convert to Christianity. And unless they do it, they will be a fallen people and they will suffer throughout their lives. So that was by law forced upon them every Sunday afternoon up to the mid of the 19th century. You can imagine the sensation. Jews were not allowed to leave the ghetto. It was a walled quarters, very tight. If you want to go out, and it was guarded by the papal guards. So it was a kind of a military encampment. If you wanted to go out, you need a special permit. Can you imagine up to 1860, when 1870, when Italy was liberated, these were the bylaws in so-called modern Europe. We are talking 1860s. Something about the Roman Jewry. This is the oldest Jewish community in the world that lived there from the 1st and 2nd century BCE, before the Common Era. Because I lived in Rome for a while, over a year, I came to know the people. If you talk to the Romans, and the Jewish Romans are very suspicious of foreigners, unless they're Israelis or tourists, and you will figure out that they carry names of Julius Caesar. Why on earth a Jew is calling his son, daughter, or Augustus, or Claudia, because of Claudius, another emperor, because in the time of the Roman Empire, those emperors allowed to have a fundraiser for the Jewish community in Judea, for the Hashmonaim kingdoms. So I just want to give you a flavor. What does it mean to live in Rome in those era? And who are the Jews of Rome? They are totally different group of people. And the papacy hated the Jewish community also for religious reasons, aside from the obvious issue connected to crucifixion of responsibility for killing of Jesus. The Jewish community in Rome was the first monotheistic religion in the Western world. The papacy, up to the very recent past, tried to cover up this fact. In Rome, you have a catacombs, burial site, that the church took over and closed them to the public. up to the 1970s, when in Italy, there was a socialist government under pressure from the Jewish community, they reopened it to the public. And when you go there, and I went there, you have inscription in Hebrew of people who were buried there in the 1st century before Christ. This is something very disturbing to the Catholic Church. They like to proclaim that the first monotheistic religion in the Western world, especially in Rome, were Christians, and it's not true. So this is where we are in terms of just background to sense what is happening in front of our eyes. So in Rome, throughout the 18th and 19th century, you have special houses that people at the outskirts of the ghetto, if a person wants to convert to Christianity, he was allowed by the guards of the Pope to come out and enter that place. There is a book by Kerzer, the one that I gave you outline to read, that gives the outline of this. So there is a person, for example, who is very, very poor. He wants a break in life. So he goes to this place and he said, I confess I recognize the divinity of Jesus Christ. By law, they forced all his family, his wife and his children, to move out of the ghetto, and under severe duress, they have a choice, and they were forced to join their own father because he is the father of the family. And they gave all kind of incentive to lure them out. There is a horrific case of a person who was demented, who is running out of the ghetto. He is coming and caught by the guards, and they persuaded him that he should be a Christian because he will have a life of leisure. I mean, they will put him in a nursing home, in a monastery that will take care of him. He agrees. Immediately, they entered the ghetto and took his family. They refused to join him, but they found a baby grandchild and said the baby grandchild belongs to us because he is the father of the greater family. They took the grandchild out, and this grandchild, the family, the parents didn't see him again. This happened in 1820s. So this is a background to the story of Edgardo Mortara. You can imagine that was a practice. Can you imagine living in a community under duress and terror, that the hardship of life, which is a common issue on a daily basis, and all of a sudden there is always hovering over your head the possibility that arbitrarily guards will come and snatch someone from your own family. And it's not medieval, and it's not early pagan era, it's in modern Europe. So you heard the story of Edgardo Mortara, that they bring him to this particular house. He's a 6-year-old and his cries out. I mean, you can imagine, you have children, you have grandchildren this age. It's just unbelievable. Comments?
So, Arie, I have a question. I'm sorry I came a little late, but
no problem. We were waiting for you.
Yeah, sure.
I waited 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Okay, I'm joking.
Well, okay. So anyway, so I thought that in order for a person to be baptized, they have to be baptized by a priest, not just a babysitter.
No, no, that's not the case. Canon law allows anybody to baptize a baby in order to save their soul, because they're born with original sin. And so the church allows any civilian whatsoever to baptize a child if they think the child is facing death or whatever.
On the verge of death. And this is a situation where the babysitter said he was on the verge of death. I had to save him, and I saved him. Look, the proof he is alive. He is alive because Jesus Christ intervened and helped him. and we need to follow the wish of Jesus. And that's what happened. So there was a full investigation by the Inquisition in order to facilitate the kidnapping of Edgardo Mortara. Our story. And now, so he's out, the child is out.
Arie, did this woman brought Jesus in and saved the child? Was she ever beatified?
Oh, you mean no, there is no reference to her, but I will find more information on this one. I'll come back to you. What is the reaction of the church? What is the reaction of the French? I mean, there is some ray of light here in reaction of modern Europe.
Well, the Pope's advisor, who is a cardinal himself, is wanting the Pope to change his mind. And it seems he was trying everything he could do to have the Pope's mind changed, because he realized, you know, probably he's much more pragmatic and he's not as holy as this. He's not even an ordained priest, but he's savvy with the world. And he goes, this is not going to end well for the church. Right. So internally, it was a real catastrophe.
Right. And it's important to note, I just mentioned to you, Italy is on the verge of a civil war. I mean, you have the Austrian ruling there, and you have in the northern part, and you have the Spaniards involved in the politics of Italy. So the Curia, the government of the papacy, they understand very well the duality of the papacy. The papacy, the Pope, is a religious leader of Christendom, but he's a political leader. And they ask him to understand his role in the concert of power of Europe. Be careful. You are going to mess up something, you are going to pay for it. But this Pope is totally oblivious. He said it's an issue of religion. I'm the religious leader of Christendom, and this is it. Full stop, and no deviation from this. And you have the coming of the ambassador, the French ambassador, the foreign minister of France, who are pressuring him. And France is the patron saint of the papacy. And they try to tell him, see reality. You're going to lose big time. And say, I cannot move from my belief.
Mm-hmm.
I
just wanted to say, this is Jennifer here. Sorry that my video's messed up today for whatever reason.
That's okay, we hear you.
But you know, I think, you know, really what happened was, you know, this is a classic case of missing the forest for the trees on the part of the Pope, because, you know, he was so relentless in not letting go of this matter of you know, the baptism and the kidnapping and not returning Edgardo to his family, that it really cost him his reputation, the way the world viewed him. And it seemed that after this matter, you know, it wasn't resolved, but once time had passed, you know, he had the Pope and the papacy had much more limited power than they had before this happened.
It's true. It's true.
I thought it was very reassuring that the population, most of whom were Catholic, were appalled. And I mean, that's why there was all the church and French advisors telling him not to do this, because the general public was opposed. That's a good thing for the Jews, right?
In a way, but it really hardened the heart of the Pope. And what is happening in the following year, in 1870, Italy is unified. It becomes a secular republic with everybody. The ghetto walls are torn down. The Jews are going living wherever they want. And the Pope is going into the wall of the Vatican and closes himself and proclaims basically that he is a prisoner of the Republic. So in a way, and that's the ultimate irony, he goes into the ghetto. The Jews are out of ghetto and he's into the ghetto of his own creation.
Yes.
Unfortunately, and this is really to the present day, when Mussolini comes to power, he created the Concordat with the papacy in 1929, which give a special position to the church in Italian affairs. It's in a way, he is recognized as part of the Italy. He is not a prisoner of the church, rather he has a special privileged position in Italy. And this Concordat valid to the present day. And that's, let's not forget, is something ominous. Something, and now I'll tell you about Edgardo Mortara. I had to refresh my memory and I didn't. I have a lot on my mind. Unfortunately, I didn't have time. As I told you, I'm selling our house here. So people are coming and going all the time. But I'm going to tell you a story that is a unique story. In 1980, I did research in Italy and I was in the city of Florence in 1980. I was many times there. This really actually happened in 1991 during the Gulf War. And I spent the time and I rented a room in a place of a lady who was the niece of the chief rabbi of Florence. Her name was Joanna Margulis, and she was from Polish origin. She survived the Holocaust. Her uncle was the chief rabbi of Florence from 1910 to 1920s, or early 1930s. And she showed me papers. I didn't read them. She said in 1910, before World War I, there was a knock on the door and a person showed himself, and that was Edgardo Mortara. He was a priest, a Dominican priest, and he wanted to argue with the chief rabbi of Florence about the veracity of Judaism. For 3 days, he stayed in his house. And from her testimony and about her uncle, he was extremely devastated and upset because Edgardo Mortara became a vehement Catholic who really wanted he said that Judaism and Jews should all convert to Catholic religion.
Wow.
So this story is unknown to anyone, including Kerzer, who wrote the most important book about it. So that's a private story that I heard, and I should follow and say to Kerzer, who is in Brown University. But I don't have any documentation to show it. What is very interesting, Edgardo Mortara, in spite of the fact that he was disconnected from his family, he reconnected to all of them, and he was very much close to his mother. And he came to her deathbed, and he wanted to convert her to Catholicism, and she refused.
Wow.
It's a very sad story. It's a tragic story. It's a tragic story. At 6-year-old, taken out of his family, and he destroyed the entire family.
A question. We are focusing on the Catholic Church. The strength of Christianity today in this country seems to be on the other side, definitely not on the Catholic side, but on the most Christian,
evangelical.
The evangelical. Pulse, exactly.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, I don't want to go politics now, but look at the composition of the Supreme Court. They are all Catholics. You have two, if I'm not mistaken, all the Supreme Court justices, except for the 2 Jewish persons, are Catholics. Am I wrong?
Well, but from a theological, from a Jewish and such, well, I'll go where I wanted to go in the first place, and maybe I'll just let you talk about this another time. Just give me,
contemporary politics away. How?
I just wanted to mention something. We went to the opera and heard a simulcast of a wonderful production of Tosca with a phenomenal tenor, and he is Korean. And they interviewed him. This is the simulcast from the Metropolitan Opera, so there's always an interview. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, they get a chance to either say something to their countrymen, or that's typically what happens. They turn to whatever country they're from, and they greet the people from their country in their own language. And this Korean asked for a second to say something, and he turned, his face looked like to all of us who were sitting in the audience, and said, "Jesus loves you." Mm. It's just such a jarring moment. I mean, I don't think the Koreans are all Catholic. They could very well be, for all I know. But you know, Jesus loves you is such an abrogation of my right to feel about who loves me. And it's something that was just so jarring to me.
I hear you.
It seems to be so universal.
Look, I know this is recorded. That's why I cannot say some experiences that I had. I'll do it in person. Yeah.
Arie, you talked about Mortara, you know, becoming very, well, I guess the right word would be evangelical, very much, you know, pushing the Catholic dogma, the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. But it's not the first time that's happened. I mean, if I remember correctly, there are some very famous stories of when there was like a famous debate between a Catholic theologian who actually grew up Jewish.
Oh yeah, we did it in a different class.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Israel. Yeah.
And it's not, you know, so it's not the only time that a formerly Jewish.
But Alan, the difference with this individual that happened as a result of the Holocaust, he was an adult. He made a decision based on his experiences. What we are experiencing with Mortara is a 6-year-old child taken from his mother and father and brothers and sisters and isolated. And that's
okay. No, I was talking about Lustinger. I was thinking about something during the medieval times, but okay, we don't need to dwell on it. Move on.
No, but regardless, it's horrific stories, horrific. Arbitrarily, you can take a person out of his home with all kinds of bizarre ideas that a nurse is baptizing him, and it's horrific. It's inhumane. The ray of hope is that Europeans of the 19th century are horrified by it. And that's important. It's an indicator of some level of integrity, some level of enlightenment, which in medieval time would have not existed. The Jews were not considered human at all. Rather, they were pariah. But I'm going to read to you Pius IX, what he said at the immediate aftermath of this. And he said the following. I couldn't print everything, but here is he made an encyclical with a papal decree in 1864. And he said the following about Jews. In these times, the haters of truth and justice and the most bitter enemies of our religion deceive the people and animal maliciously. They disseminate impious doctrines by means of pestilential books, pamphlets, and newspaper distributed over the whole world. Nor are you ignorant of the fact that in our age some men are found who move by the spirit of Satan, have sunk to the degree of impiety in which they do not shrink from denying our ruler and Lord Jesus Christ, or from impugning his divinity with wicked pertinency. And then he speaks, and I'm going to go to the very end. And basically he said, we have today in Rome, unfortunately, too many of these dogs, and we hear them barking in all the streets and going around, molesting people everywhere. The Jews were responsible for killing Christ, and they created the synagogue of Satan. So I'm just jumping, but that's the encyclical of the Pope. And what you have here, someone asked me about the relationship to the New World. So what we have here is basically an indictment of the Jews that undermine Christendom. And they undermine, they bring modernity, enlightenment, and all this spirit that does not belong to the hardcore conservatism of the Catholic Church and the Catholic religion. Because the nation should be a Christian nation. And here I'm sliding to where we are in our reading about France.
So,
yes.
Let me ask you, I'm not sure which Pope it was, but didn't one of the recent popes, I don't know if it was like 3 popes back or something like that, didn't he apologize to the Jews for that? Is that still?
Yes and no, it goes both ways. You know, there is the duplicity. For example, Wojtyla, the Pope John Paul II, he canonized Pius IX in the year 2000, made him a saint. Only 2 people since the 16th century were canonized. One, John Paul XXIII, who basically came with Vatican II that said that Jews are not responsible for the killing of Christ, and that was in 1966. And at the same time, canonizing Pius IX. So you have it both ways. Terrible stuff.
Yeah.
The church is playing both ways, and the Catholic Church and the Vatican are playing both ways. They were against a Balfour Declaration, the Vatican. They were against the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. So they are always had this duality. So as I told you, this is a distressing kind of a class, but what can we do? This is reality.
But going back to what you said before, you know, the irony was that, you know, the Pope ended up in the ghetto and the Jews ended up liberated. Yes, so that we have to end on that note. That's a good ending, right?
In a way, yes. Look, I lived in Italy, and the most, and I encountered, because I'm Jewish and Israeli and American, and I speak Italian, I encountered so many incidents of anti-Semitism. I will just tell you one of them. I went to a small village a small township. I mean, they have about 100,000 people, which is not that small. But I went to a barber shop to have a haircut. Did I tell you that story?
No.
Okay, you will hear this one. And I'm chatting with them, and we were talking about the Gulf War, which took place at the time, 1991. And one of the one of the elderly people who were waiting for a haircut, he said to me, he started to talk if I know if I'm related to those who judge Jesus to death in the Talmud era. If I know them, if I'm related to them. I said, no, I'm not. I was joking. But then he said, you know what they said about American Jews? If you put them 1,000 years, even if they were born in New York, you put them 1,000 years, they will not be American. They will always be Jews. And I said, you know what they say about the Italians in America? You take an Italian 1,000 years in America, he will still be a mafia. They all became so enraged. I said, why are you enraged? You're insulting me. You don't understand insult.
Mm-hmm.
Now I give you, I respond to you in your coin.
Right.
Mafiosi, 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 mafia, 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 capone, capone, capone. They were so outraged. I said, don't be. And they were stunned, but it forced them to think.
Yeah.
So this is my...
Did he give you a bad haircut?
Maurice, I'll tell you another story. I became a very good friend with some people there. And they introduced me. I had a lunch, and he was a professor of Jewish history, not Jewish, Italian. But I came to meet his in-laws. His parents were modern, but his in-laws came for lunch or dinner or something. And the mother-in-law of his wife, and she didn't shake my hand, but she tried to look behind me. And then he became very upset. He became very upset. I didn't understand why she was looking behind me. And then after they left, he said, you know, she was looking for the devil tail.
Oh, no. Wow.
1991.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's not crazy. That's I'm giving you my first eye testimony.
Yeah, no, I believe you. I mean, just the belief system is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody taught them.
Right.
Well, Arie, isn't that why in the Vatican, let's say, I went when I was in Rome, I went to look at artwork. You know, I didn't go to the ghetto, unfortunately, but when they have the statue of Moses, you know, and they have him with horns.
With horns, because
right. So
no, but this is that's Michelangelo. In Hebrew, Karan or Panav, it meant two things. Either he had horns or it was enlightened.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. They kind of misinterpreted enlightenment and said, no, well, he has horns, you know. So, I mean, I know that I've heard stories of even people in the United States who've never seen a Jew before. And then when they see one, you know, they wonder, well, where are your horns, you know? So, yeah.
It's true. My wife experienced someone in a different incident in Italy where someone tapped her head to see where are the horns. I forgot all about that, yeah.
We're talking about Italy, but Germany was one of the places where I know of the wife of an American GI, a young bride who was living there with in rented quarters, and the landlady told absolutely would not believe that the Old Testament, what she called the Old Testament, came ahead of her Bible. There was just no way that these stories were ahead of that. There's no question Jesus came first, and then of course there's this other thing called the Old Testament.
But it's called Old Testament, not New Testament. Why does it called Old?
Well, I don't know what it's called in German, but she absolutely argued with her that there's no way that this other part. Meanwhile, my technician's my technician was Catholic, and she absolutely knew what the truth was, but the landlady absolutely would not.
Wow. So, well,
before you, I don't know if you're getting ready to move on to Dreyfus.
Well, I'm ready.
But before you do, for many years, several generations, the souvenir sellers outside of the Vatican were all Jewish. And the positions were passed down from father to son.
That's
so I
interesting.
think it's kind of ironic.
Where did you read about it? I'm not familiar with it. But
I did. First, I heard about it, and then
yeah,
Alan,
if you can forward it to me, it will be.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear about it. But Jews, basically, Jews in Rome today, and there are not many left, but they are basically they are running all the fashion industry in Rome. If you go to Via Veneto, the owners of these fashionable places are Jewish. Also in Italy, in Rome, but also in Florence. I know. I know personally some of them in Rome and in Florence. I'm not sure how it works in Milan. Probably Jews were into the fashion industry for many, many centuries because they used to import silk and other ornamental and jewelry from the East. So they took advantage of that market. So now we are moving to the most known story of the Dreyfus affair. Alfred Dreyfus was an artillery captain and was out of nowhere, out of the blue, accused of treason. And that brings us to something totally different, the rise of the nation state. A nation state is replacing as the what we had before, up to the late 19th century, up to 1800. We are talking of universal monarchies, of empires. The Russian Empire, which Putin tried to renovate, the Austrian multi-ethnic empire, the French Empire, the British Empire, the German Empire, they all had different ethnic groups. But now, at the aftermath of the Napoleonic War, we have the rise of a nation state. And the nation state is unbelievably how it's going to define itself. As one ethnic group with one religion or not. Is it going to be a democracy? Is it going to be a constitutional monarchy like in England? Or is it going to be monolithic, one people, one ethnic group, one religion? And what do you do with the people who do not belong to that religion? That's the issue that is haunting the French. If you follow the election in France today, that issue is still on the mind of the French. You had Le Pen, which represent Christian France, one nation, one flag, one army, honor of the country, honor of the flag, only on. And then you have the multiplicity that is reflected by the Republican coalition of Macron. And in a way, that duality and tension is reflected in France of the late 19th century. In 1875, France was defeated by Germany. Germany took Alsace-Lorraine from the French, and the French was wounded morally and in terms of their own sense of worth, and they created a republic. And the republic was secular, and it had its own enemies, and the enemies were multiplicity. One belonged to the Bonapartists. They wanted to have a general in charge like Napoleon Bonaparte. Another one wanted a monarchy like Bourbons, who were traditionalist, anti-democratic. And then you have the conservative, religious and Catholic League that is represented in your reading by Drummond, who wrote this a book about Jewish France. The Jews are taking over. You gave them citizenship, they are taking over, they are all over. And they are destroying us. This is not France. Now, Drummond, this book, it's of course, it's a small excerpt. It was published in 200 editions, 200 editions read by millions. And you had another publication of the most popular Catholic newspaper by the name of the La Croix, the Cross, that also represented the ideology of the Jews, the synagogue of Satan, who are taking over and destroying France. And they are disguising themselves under the Freemason. The Freemason, that's an organization that comes in the 18th century in England, and it's a coalition, it's an association of intellectuals with all kind of joint or common interests. The only problem with them that they are hiding their keep secret their membership and the associations. So it was always rumored that Freemasons are Jews. That's organization to take over France and the world. You hear it today, by the way, if you follow, what's his name? The leader of Hungary, who claims that the Jewish cabal is trying to take over and destroy Hungary, and that helped him to win election in a landslide. Orban, yeah, but they say that there is there is a guy in Wall Street who is of Hungarian origin, who is supporting pro-democratic activities in Hungary. I forgot his name. Soros is the person. You're absolutely right. So he is, in a way, this ideology and nonsense approach is reflected today. Things are changing, but sometimes they remain the same. So we are in front of the story of Alfred Dreyfus. You read, I gave you Harris a concise description, which is, her book is very good. It's a 400 pages book that, of course, I could bring it to class. But the introduction summarizes what is happening here. So what do you think? What alarms you the most when you read this?
Well, that it was a cover-up by the military. And, you know, somehow, you know, that when the truth came out, they couldn't accept the fact that they were wrong.
Right, and there was another cover-up. There are two trials that are cover-up.
Right.
There are three. Third, we have an immediate exploring of the real culprit, Esterhazy.
Mm-hmm.
Who basically you have the bordereau, this document that they found in the trash can of the German embassy. And they try to say that the handwriting is of, you have all kind of detective of handwriting on, of course, it was Esterhazy. his real estate, his financial advisor recognized, identified his handwriting and brought samples of his handwriting. And they denied it. They brought an expert, Arie, who falsified the handwriting to imitate the handwriting of Dreyfus as a cover-up. Horrific story. They know who is the culprit. They try to cover up. They put him on trial, and he is acquitted. How bad can it be? Now, Esterhazy, I'm not sure it's written in the introduction, is fleeing France. He couldn't believe his good luck. He flees France, and he writes an expose how he did it. Still, they ignore it. It's unbelievable. And it's all in the name of honor of the army. The army cannot go wrong.
By history, in fact, though, this whole affair weakened the French officer corps. And in fact, you know, I mentioned before, I'm reading the history of World War I, that the French were not ready for the war because there was so much rot because of what had been damaged by the Dreyfus affair.
Yeah, but it's a very interesting argument that you have these sacred cows in the new state. The state is above everything, above justice, about truth. You just sanctify the state. The state can do nothing wrong. At previous era is this the church could do nothing wrong. Here, the army. The army is deified. The state is deified. These are precursors of fascist behavior. The state can do nothing wrong. Leaders can do nothing wrong. Justice and the rule of law are not totally relevant. Sometimes they undermine and give a sense, and they're
I don't know to what degree this is relevant, but the name Esterhazy is a Hungarian translation of the name. If you were to take the Hungarian language and use the word Esterhazy, means it's from the house of Esther.
So he's
Esther Hazy, Haz is a house,
right?
And it's from the house of Esther.
But he's not Jewish.
Well, I know he's not Jewish. The question is, Hungarians have been anti-Semitic for millennia.
Right.
And I don't know how he ended up being French, but it's a fascinating thing that when I was reading this, I had remembered that, but I never really associated it with the Hungarian origin of the name.
Right, it's very interesting. The point is, they pointed out that Dreyfus is from Alsace. Originally, the family is from Alsace, and Alsace, by association, he's Jewish. The other thing about him is he's really German. The German defeated the French in the War of 1870. He must be a traitor. And he was a real French patriot. Throughout his trial, he just claimed, I'm a French patriot. They really wanted him, you read the stuff, they wanted him to commit suicide. He was in this Devil's Island, and they locked in a brutal heat, and with minimal ability to eat, he kept the religion, didn't eat pork. He lost all his teeth. When he came out 10 years later, he was unrecognizable. So and here you have the Dreyfus Yard, the party of Dreyfus, which is the left of right, the intellectual, those who are favoring the idea of a democratic state of rule of law and order, And on the other side, you cover up. The army can do nothing wrong. And we need to cover up. And this is an ominous sign that threaten the vitality and viability of a democracy. I'm tempted almost, I remember the atrocities, or not the atrocities, of the horrific consequences of the Vietnam War here in America. I remember My Lai. Well, it took expose of 60 minutes and a very long time to write about. And I am reminded, as I was in the Israeli army, when there were atrocities, and there were in war, atrocities are taking place. In 1948, there were atrocities committed against the Arab civilians. The top Israeli poet wrote about it, Natan Alterman. He wrote a poem about it, and the censorship tried to cover it up. Prime Minister Ben-Gurion said, no, we are not going to go the way that happened in other countries where the army is above the law. We are going to publish this poem and give it to every soldier in the Israeli army, because we are not covering atrocities. The army is the army of the citizens, and they cannot behave like that. Something closer on that respect. I'm sure you remember the issue, the massacre of Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon. And the Israeli, it was a commission, and immediately they put out of and the atrocities committed by Christian phalangers, but with the complicity of the Israeli army. They had at the time, Sharon, who was Secretary of Defense, was thrown out of government. He returned later as a prime minister, but there was some kind of reference to that, and immediately an action was taken, and as a result, the Prime Minister Begin basically quit political life as a result of this committee investigation. Nothing is perfect, but at least action was taken and they didn't avoid it. There is no honor of the army. There is no honor in atrocities. And here it is, in plain sight. The time and again, the legal process failed Dreyfus, failed him. What is not written here, I'll tell you, they put him in a second trial in Rennes, which is a northern city by the sea, which is very conservative. The first day of retrial, where he was convicted again, the first day of the retrial, his lawyer is walking towards the courthouse. A guy with a gun comes and shoots the lawyer. The lawyer is bleeding on the pavement. It's not written in what I gave you to read. He is bleeding, and his assistant is pleading the people to come and help. No one came to help. It took an hour for someone to come and bring and load him on a car, and they took him to a hospital. The assistant attorney is going in front of the panel of judges. He said, look, they shot the lead attorney. Can we have a postponement? And the lead judge, it's a military court. No, we proceed as is. Thank goodness the attorney survived. Later on, we are going to talk about Émile Zola. Émile Zola died of carbon monoxide. He fled to France because of there was a libel suit against him. He knew he will be put in jail. He fled to England. And he died of carbon monoxide. No, it's not shenanigan like Putin. He just was a plain, unventilated place. Eventually, he was recognized as a hero because of his fight on behalf of Dreyfus, and he was buried in the Pantheon. In the ceremony of the burial, listen to this, The president of the republic was there, and Alfred Dreyfus was there, and this is 2008 or 2000, sorry, 1908. The entire core of the media at the time, no television, is coming. One of the journalists of the right wing takes a gun, comes to Dreyfus, shoots Dreyfus. Dreyfus has a good instinct. He put his hand and it doesn't hit him on the face, it hit his hand, the bullet. It's a small wound, he survives. They put this guy on trial, who is a right-wing extremist journalist. He is acquitted.
Crazy.
I'm telling you this story to give you an indication. This is not a justice prevail. This is a murky area with a lot of black spots and a lot of gray area. I told you, it's a very, very sad story. But I think the gray of light is Jacques, Émile Zola. What struck you, what uplifted you when you read about it? You can.
Well, I felt like it galvanized the causes of a desire for rationality, truth, and justice, and the fact that Zola knew that he was going to be, you know, that this was going to come back to bite him, but he stood his ground and said, I have to speak out against what's happening to Dreyfus and how the treatment of Dreyfus is tarnishing our country and our reputation.
It's very important because here what we have is the relevancy and importance of free and fighting press for rights and justice. And this is something important, especially as we see what is happening in our own society today. If we had not this vigilant press, who knows where our democracy would have been. And he is strong. And he is attacking directly the entire echelon of the French military. The Minister of Defense, the head of intelligence, and other people in the senior position involved in the Dreyfus affairs. And that's take courage. In fact, he gave up life of luxury, and I mean, probably you read some of his books. I mean, he is a top writer who made money from his books. He was the most popular writer of his era. And he became a pariah. He had to flee France, relocate to London, and without knowledge what will happen to him. And he died by carbon monoxide, but still, this is courage. On the other hand, you have the religious right, the fanatics, fascist writings that said all the Jews are responsible. It's a Jewish cabal to undermine France. Why are they citizens to begin with? They are taking over. They are disloyal. They are disloyal in Austria. They are disloyal in Russia. There is a reason there are pogroms in Russia. It's because they are not loyal to the government. Loyalty is the new mantra of the extreme right. Loyalty and honor. These are a twisted logic of honor and loyalty are the new false patriotisms of a tyranny.
Of course, the problem is that if you look at the history of Jewish soldiers, whether they be French or Russian or German or British or American, Jewish, for example, Germany, per capita, the highest number of Iron Crosses awarded in World War I were awarded to Jews.
Interesting.
And in fact, Adolf Hitler's first Iron Cross denomination was by a Jewish captain.
That's
recognized his bravery.
Right. And a Jewish doctor took care of Hitler's mother, and he was grateful, by the way, even when he became a chancellor. And this doctor relocated, fled Germany to New York. And that's how we know about it.
Wow.
But it's very interesting. When you read the story of the Alfred Dreyfus, you have all the forerunners element of a deification of the state, of deification of the false notion of honor, and the army is the new mantra of a sainthood, regardless of the behavior. And this is unbelievably terrifying. Any particular reference that you found of interest in this, of catching your eye? Because it's always, for me, I'll read you what I found in Zola, which caught my eye, and I thought it's so unbelievably revealing and important. On page, I have it 353 in the middle of the first column. It is a crime to poison the minds of the little and the humble, to exasperate the passion of reaction and intolerance while seeking refuge behind that odious anti-Semitism of which great liberal France of the rights of men, will die unless she is cured of her disease. It is a crime to exploit patriotism for words of hatred. And finally, it is a crime to make of the sword a modern god when all human science is laboring for the coming work of truth and justice. I think it's so powerful. It's almost immortal words, important for us to the present day.
Arie, there's a question from Michael.
Michael.
In the chat. Michael Newman. He said, I'm assuming he can't.
He cannot probably come. Okay, can he hear us? But his microphone is shut.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that for some reason he can't say it himself. So I will say it. I'll read what he said. After release, why did Dreyfus remain in the French army?
Well, he did not. He retired. What is happening that he was not. They didn't recognize the years that he was not fully exonerated like he should have been, and returned to his position. Rather, he didn't receive the payment for all these 10 years that he spent in jail. So within 1 year, he retired. He just quit the army. However, he was a patriot. In World War I, he joined the army to fight for the defense of France. He was in the Maginot Line, and he in a combat position for a while in Germany, fighting against the Germans. His wife, I need to follow up on that. I think she survived the Holocaust in hiding and died in 1945, immediately after liberation. His grandson or granddaughter married the grandson or granddaughter of Emile Zola. And they came to Israel in 1975 or something like that, or the great-grandson, granddaughter. And one of his nieces of Dreyfus came to Israel, to live in Israel. And I read an interview with her about 10 years ago. But the story is what is happening also. We are talking about the bright side of journalism, but there is the dark side of journalism, and that's Drummond. Drummond, the guy who wrote about French, and then you see the rise of a proto-fascist group by the name Action Française. In the early 1900s, they became the French Nazis that helped in World War II the Vichy government to rule over France, and they come as inspired by the Jewish conspiracy to help Alfred Dreyfus. Yeah.
And then from them, of course, we now have the National Front.
And then, yeah. And now there is more twists and turns. The National Front focuses not so much on Jews, rather it focuses on Muslims, which has another problem of they suffer a lot from terrorism there. It's a real problem. Comments? Now we are coming, I gave you to read Fritsch. Fritsch is the forerunner of Adolf Hitler, highly influential on Adolf Hitler. And that really brings us to next week, which really will blow you away, the Unholy Alliance between Nazi Germany and the Palestinians' national movement. But Fritsch is giving you another indication of racial anti-Semitism. Yeah. So, it's just the other side of the Emile Zola. Theodor Fritsch, the racist decalogue. What strikes you when you read this?
It was like the 10 Commandments in reverse.
Yeah. But what is the unique element that is introduced here that we haven't seen in other places?
It's the concept of race.
It's a concept of purity of blood.
Yeah.
And purity of blood mean basically, even if you show in a traditional anti-Semitism, they ask you to convert and you're a Christian. And that's okay, you are blend into mainstream Christendom. Race introduces a different ominous element. You can never blend in. You try to convert, but then you are disguised, you are even more dangerous. There is no way for you to blend in. You're a microbe, you're a virus, you're someone that cannot be purified. You're doomed and destined to be destroyed.
Arie, what's ironic to me about that, though, is in much of Jewish teaching, a Jew is a Jew regardless of what a Jew does. Even if a Jew converts, for a lot of rabbis,
is still Jew.
Exactly. So the only thing is, it's like there's something Jewish that actually feeds that concept that whatever you do, you're still a Jew regardless, right? It's ironic to me. It's, anyway.
But then, if you convert, you're Jew, a fully Jew and all of it. I'll tell you a funny story, not a funny story. In the most Haredi community in Israel are Naturei Karta, okay? Mm-hmm. In Jerusalem, the purest of the pure. So they had a rabbi by the name of Amram Bloy. In 1966, he became a widower. He fell in love with a beautiful French woman. Guess what? She converted. She was 40 years younger than he was, and they married. And the Haredi community was outraged. But she converted, and she was highly educated. And now, after many, many years later, we know because of her, she had multiple passports. She had a French and a German passport. She spoke fluent German and French. She was a top agent of the Mossad.
Amazing. I love it.
It has nothing to do with anything, but in some way it has a lot to do.
But the concept of sitting Shiva for a child who marries out, doesn't that and the concept of rejecting that particular person out of the Jewish community, that goes against that, does it not?
I don't follow. Regarding race, purity
regarding
of blood?
Race, regarding anything. If you are, if your parents sit Shiva and you're put in Cherem by your community, you effectively, a generation, 2 generations later, nobody will ever know that you were Jewish. And does that, is that the Jewish way of dealing with such things? I've always found it to be very un-Jewish.
Can you email me this? I will follow it.
Okay.
It's not clear to me, but write it to.
Well, I'm just saying that there are people who will sit Shiva for a child.
Oh, I follow you. So a person who convert to out of religion, leaves Judaism.
Exactly.
Oh, I see where you are going. Yeah.
And the community effectively, actually, it's part of the I think it's part of one of the prayers where it says, if you don't follow this, you are not a member of the community. You effectively are in a cherem, and you're no longer a part of the community.
Well, there is, and there are other issues that people are still in contact with people who left the religion. If we'll do another class, I'll share with you some stories about it too, but that's really, we are moving away.
Yeah, okay.
Arie?
Yes.
We know that some of the early basis for the Nazi laws about the Jews was actually based on the way that blacks were treated in America. The discrimination, the separation was based on the way that particularly in the South, the way that we treated that America treated its black population. Do we know if Fritsch and the others who started the blood basis, if that came from the belief in the US about the blood, like no matter how small the amount of blood you might have, that you would be considered black. And, if you go down to, or if you look at what was down, particularly in New Orleans, there was almost like a caste system of, from completely white.
I really don't know about Fritsch, but I will look into it.
Okay, thanks.
But Alan, did you get that from the book Caste?
I don't remember where I got it from. I just remember reading that the Nazis started or picked up the segregation in the South and adopted that.
Yeah, Wilkerson, who wrote this book, Caste, she talks about that, how Germans came here and saw what, how blacks were treated, and used some of those same, techniques to deal with the Jews in Germany.
Also, too, one thing that happened is the Germans, their whole program of eugenics, and race, they actually got that from eugenics people who were doing those studies in the United States before the war.
There is a study that says that the Germans started the issue of eugenics not from looking at the United States, but from colonization of Africa. When they went into Africa, and later on, they were instrumental in the destruction of the Armenians, helping the Armenians to cover up the killing of Armenians during World War I in 1915. So they were involved in that, and they were influencing and influenced by them, and they were the key people in the Waffen-SS involving in the final solution later on. So there is a book about it on Fire on the Tigris by a professor that I knew, who was an Armenian professor here at the U of M, and I think he moved to Princeton or some other Ivy League places. So I got from him this book, and that's what he says. But it's very interesting where we are going with this ideology of the cult of the state, and it has to be purified and monolithic and homogeneous in terms of race. And that's a breakthrough. You cannot blend in. There are no options for you. You are out forever. And it's moving away from the Christian idea that Jews are allowed under certain circumstances to be integrated. So now you are putting an iron gate or an iron curtain of sort to separate them forever. Be careful, they are blending in, they are insect, they are virus, they need to eradicate it from the pure bloodstream of Aryan nation. Our story. So I don't have much more to add. I told you it's an hour and a half for me, but I think we will have much more in that respect with the issue of Arab, the Waffen-SS in the Arab universe.
Yep.
And that will be the end. And then I'll come to River Forest. Early June, I'm there.
Great.
Wonderful.
Right on. Thank you so much. This is really,
Thank you.
really
Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful week. By the midweek, you will have the readings and you will get more depressed.
So timely.
I don't find it depressing. Again, I will say I don't find it depressing. The more I learn about the history and everything that's going on, the more I feel blown away by the resilience of the Jewish people, the miracle of the state of Israel. None of this stuff surprises me after
you are uplifting my spirit.
I just have to tell you. I mean,
I love this. I love hearing that.
But it's true, though. It's true, and I just wish I'm glad to share. I'm glad because I don't speak much, but I'm glad that I spoke. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Take it easy.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.
Happy Mother's Day.
Mother's Day and Grandmother's Day.